Welcome back to the second block of the Trash Talk on textiles organized by VIRWa. In the first block, we discussed how textiles are consumed and how their waste is managed today, and also what environmental and social consequences our textiles consumption has. And now in this second block, we will discuss what we can change to reduce these negative impacts of the textile sector. So, Andreas, what can we do to lower the negative? Let's start with the environmental impacts of textiles.
Well, this is quite complicated questions. When on the one hand you can, let's say, optimize the production chain. There are a lot of, it's a very long and elaborate supply chain with a lot of steps in between, and each step consumes a lot of energy and has a lot of emissions. And of course you can try to minimize all these emissions and optimize all these procedures. And on the other hand, you can go to the end of life phase. So it's not the best, so maybe it's not the best solution to incinerate or dispose these textiles, but to recycle the materials.
And work with this field, and it's one aim of the EU strategy to increase recycling. What do we have to change at the textiles design to enable recycling? What is the status, the current status of your research?
Well, basically, one could think that textiles are quite easy to recycle because either they consist of cellulose, cotton, which is pretty the same as paper, and paper is recycled to a large extent, and end-of-life paper is there's a high demand for collected paper, and on the other hand, polyester. So it's like our PET bottles. So they are collected separately, and a lot of producers use 100% recycling PET for their new bottles. So it's the same. But where's the difference? The difference that we have mixtures. We do not have one fiber, but we have two or more fibers in one fabric. And it's even worse because we collect it in a container, so then we have 3, 4, 5 different types of fibers, and we have a lot of additives. So we have at least 100 different types of dyes. We have finishings, we have other additives on the surface or in the fiber, and we have a lot of chemical of concerns. We do not even know which chemicals are in there. So design for recycling would be very important. So there's a lot of things to improve.
To align the used substances, but still probably we will have a mix of different materials that are used.
Of course, we will have a mix because the consumer wants a certain function and certain functionality needs a certain mixture of different fiber types.
And can we separate these mixtures then?
Not on an industrial scale, but let's say this work started only recently, 2 or 3 years ago. I had a research project 10 years ago, and we never thought of separating a polymer from mixed textiles. We never thought of that because it was too complicated. But I think that the sorting technology improved a lot. We have NER technology, so we can make a pre-selection of certain textiles. And I think there's also room for improvement to further make a better separation of textiles.
With NIR, you said you recognize which material
it
is. Yes,
it's possible. And if we can generate different fractions, that can be fed to certain recycling procedures. And currently, it's quite unclear. So on the one hand, how far can sorting go? On the other hand, how flexible are certain recycling technologies?
And then if we have the fibers, we can just recycle them back into textiles?
Well, more concrete. So I do not use chemical or mechanical or physical recycling because it's different industries use different terms. So I say if we want to recycle textiles to make, let's say, fiber to fiber, we go back on the polymer level. So we extract, for instance, or we if we have two fibers in one fabric, we can dissolve or get rid of one, receive the residual fiber, which is a single polymer, and then use the polymer for a de novo fiber production. So we need a certain pre-separation to get, let's say, textiles that contain 90 or more % cotton, or 90 or more % polyester, or 80% polyester, get rid of the residual fibers and recycle the polyester, or recycle the, let's say, the cellulose of the cotton. Mm-hmm. So for the cellulose, this is already viable on an industrial scale, at least if it's clean. And for PET, it's possible on an, let's say, lab scale for what we say low-hanging fruits. Mm-hmm. So we used white bed linens.
Have you estimated which share of all waste, for which share this could be a suitable treatment?
We are currently investigating that. So we are in Vienna. There's a waste analysis, so we have the information what is the percentage of textiles in the residual waste. We get these textiles and then we can further separate it. Mm-hmm. But we are in the very beginning, and I think that worldwide there are no data available on that.
Mm-hmm. Now, circular economy often starts even before recycling, right? There are other strategies to retain the value of products. Which other strategies does the EU textile strategy involve to make the sector more sustainable?
The EU says in the textile strategy that textiles we use should become circular. I mean, he said, okay, but how we can think about it? We can think about it that you will have clothes in the future. Let's say they have 89% cotton and 2% of elastan. It says written in this book, for instance. But the other way is to challenge the new products should have a certain amount of recycled fibers. Let's say 5 to 70% of the fiber used in this product should be recycled.
Coming from textiles, or it can also come from PET bottles, for example, as it is?
I wouldn't say at that point we don't have any other choice, just to take what we have in recycling. Even it's right now a PET bottle recycling. The other thing, we have no quantities to get all these demands. Therefore, we said, please don't make benchmarks verbindlich. Mandatory, yeah, because we cannot afford it on the market. It will be too expensive because there's not a lot of amount, and we have shortage, and then we have problems in the competition. Mm-hmm. But we have to start and go in that line. We know what you want, and I think we will need at least, the textile strategy says 2 or 30, all the products should be circular. This I don't believe. I think we need at least 2 or 40 or 2 or 50 till all these achievements are done to comply with the vision of the textile strategy of the EU. It will take time. We need funding, and parallel the taxonomy is developed in Europe on European legislation, which says there only should be investment for those products who are greener than green up to now. That means you will get your fundings for producers, not anymore for a stage which is like today, Oecotex 100 or STEP. That's now, in a couple of years, we should be to go on more. The substances of concern, which we have to look at right now, will be not anymore interesting. We have to go up to a much more scale and look for much difficult problems. We'll get to this politic.
So many changes to come. Is the sector already working on initiatives to comply with these aims of the EU? The textile industry in Austria, for example, to become a forerunner worldwide?
Yes, we have labels which already developed in the last couple of years, let's say cradle to cradle products produced cradle to cradle. This started a couple of years ago, and we have, let's say, one lingerie manufacturer. You know, it may be Wolford, you know, but it's very difficult because you need the investment, and then the product will be more expensive. And who wants to give more for a product which looks like a black pullover? You can buy it for this amount, and then you buy cradle to cradle for another price. And that's the problem we face right now with the transitional products.
And that's why it's very important that the rules also apply to the companies which import products, right? We briefly talked about it before. Will this be possible to control and to really enforce that also companies importing clothes, which make up the biggest share, will adhere to these rules?
I think the strategy is more of a vision, and there are some requirements. As for the eco-design requirements, I think they are crucial and they will be legally binding, and also the harmonization of the EPR, extended producer responsibility.
Maybe you can briefly explain what that is.
It's a concept where the producer takes the responsibility for the final treatment of a clothing item, either by paying a certain fee or managing it on its own. And it was already introduced in France in 2007. So there it's running on a large scale. And I think the EU is envisioning something like that on the whole of the European level. And I think that's a good approach.
And this should also be used to then enforce more sustainable design, right? By modulation of the fees.
Yes, of course. And all these aspects, let's say, are interconnected. So it will take a certain amount of time until we reach the goal of circularity, and until all of these measures will be implemented successfully. So I also think that it will not happen by 2030, but...
No, because it's exactly... And France started with the ökomodulare payings the producers had to pay, but they switched now. It was the later thing. It will get on a different kind of base, because the way we have to implement it, even in Netherlands, we have some actions for that too. And the European Union tries now really to get a system which we all can apply. Because we are not yet clear how it really should work. You know, we are at the beginning. In France, it worked very well, but they switched now.
And of course, as first step comes the collection of textiles, which we still need to scale up. It's also a mandatory goal, or that's mandatory actually, to put the system in place, right, for separate collection. You, Matthias, work with, at that point, at the collection. What will happen then if we collect these clothes? What will happen to them?
Well, currently the collection finances itself through the revenues from the market sales. And just to give you a very, very rough number, as I mentioned before, about 5% of the textiles in Austria are put on the Austrian market again. Half of all what is collected by our member, which are social enterprises. The rest is private collectors. The private collectors export 100%. Our members put 10% on the market, so the average is then 5%. And these 10% of the collected material put on the Austrian markets creates 60% of the market revenues. And the 90% which is exported creates only 40% of the revenue. So that means we should, if we now collect more, the quality will lower down, because the collection motivation of people who donate something into a textile container or bring it to a charity organization, the motivation is donation, do something good, have a social impact with that donation. And if we want to collect in the future more textiles because of reducing the residual waste, because reducing incineration, because we want more recycling, and then the quality will go down. The motivation of donation will be crushed, probably. So what we will have to do is maybe separate two ways of collection: a donation collection for reuse, and a recycling collection, which is run by municipalities, or like it is done now with other recyclable waste like paper, packaging, and e-waste and things like that. So I think the future will be really, really challenging, and recycling will not be the solution, because in every recycling process, except glass, you have losses. So in every step of sorting, processing, and reprocessing, whatever technology you take, you have losses. And the more complex the material is, and glass is the material which has the least complexity, so it can be recycled 100%. But even metal, which is relatively non-complex, you still have losses. And the more it goes down to paper, which is still good, but then to plastics recycling and then fiber recycling, the losses, the materials get more complex, you have more losses. So you have to reduce the overall input to the market, you have to use things longer, and not only look to the product and to the end of life, but on that in between, the use phase. And there we step in as a network of social enterprises who offer this part of reusing, sharing, redistributing used clothes. But for that, we need high quality and durable products.
Is that also foreseen by the EU strategy? Are there concrete measures
it's
that
in
should
there?
enhance
It's
that?
in there. It's in the strategy. They even acknowledge the special role of social enterprises in this segment. Which is good for us, but I have the impression the new textile strategy is a collection of good ideas, but not yet a clear roadmap, what should be done by whom, to what extent, and who should pay for it, and especially the question who should pay. There is a lot of high hopes and expectancies to EPR schemes, but I think they are good. We are in favor for EPR schemes, but we see from packaging, e-waste, and other, and even from France, where we have it for furniture and textile as well, that EPR schemes didn't reduce the overconsumption. They didn't reduce the mass flows put on the market. They simply managed the financing differently than before, and maybe added some more efficiency to the processes. And so if we want to have a textile EPR now, we have to completely design it differently from the other EPR schemes that we already know.
What can we do to increase longevity, for example, of textiles, or to reduce the overconsumption?
That is a question where I'm not the expert, I must admit, so I think this should go to someone else.
To educate it, as we said before, but also to boost the role of innovation and technology in all the phases, because we have to have a life cycle approach. That means that we have to look at all different phases, all different moments, and we have to gain information, but information not in value, but in quantity, in mass. I'm sorry if I stress this concept, but I'm convinced that the two information in value and mass can complete the general knowledge about the sector. And I agree with what said my colleague before. We can have one solution, good for everyone and everywhere. We have to learn a set of solutions, good solution, and then apply in different situations. Because, for example, in Austria, where incinerization is the highest practice for urban waste, is different from Italy, is different from France, and so we have to gain the tool to adapt good practices in different situations, and probably knowing and follow the different mass and value flows we can gain the base to evaluate and to organize good policies.
Which type of information would we need, for example?
Quantitative, I'm sorry, because if I balance from a quantitative point of view what enter in the system and what leaving the system, I can really gain different information related to quality, related to the quantity, related to the moment, and so I can evaluate, for example, the possibility to use another material, another chemicals, or to understand the possibility of implement the industrial symbiosis with other industrial sector, and so enlarge the possibility to stop this mass of reserves in the human system. I'm sorry.
Anthropocene, yes. So maybe to quickly come back of what we also said before about the higher collection. Of course, a share can be recycled, but the aim, as we heard, recycling is challenging, and aim is to reuse more. In Austria and other European countries, maybe the reuse potential is limited, so a lot will probably still be exported. Is this a problem, or can we improve the waste management abroad? How do you see that?
I think there is a threat that the more we collect, the more will be going to third countries, to low-income countries. And there we have to note that they face increased challenges when it comes to textile waste recycling, and it will challenge their critical infrastructure even more. And also I think a valuable point is also who will finance recycling. So is it state funded, or how profitable will that be, so that, for example, the private sector will invest in this area? So I think there are a lot of questions.
I mean, from the point of view of our industries, there has to be a long transitional period, so the companies can start investing and can making research and so on. We need a longer period, but the funding must be given from the EU. I mean, the companies invest, they do, but it's not enough. There has to be a good help and aid from the EU, but the taxonomy, the EU has 16 legislation, will develop 16 pieces of law to make the textile strategy, the vision, brought back to earth, and we have to tackle now really very closely these 16 legislation pieces. And we are right now in the phase of the eco-design regulation directive. And we sit together and we make brainstorming what we can fill in that's feasible for our companies, that's achievable, that's economical, and that the transitional period is long enough and funding is here. You see, that's all. We will talk about this again, let's say in 5 years. Maybe we sit together and then everybody tells what's happened in 5 years.
We'll tell the organizers to organize this. But yeah, so there are many change plans anyways, and they sound very good, and lowering environmental impact is what we all want, I think. But will this change something for us as consumers? Will we feel this implementation in the way how we consume textiles, or how the textile products look like, how their function is? What do you expect? Which changes for us consumers do you expect?
Products which are placed on the market depend on the demand of the people who want to buy them. That what you want to buy, somebody will produce what I want to buy. That's what we want, and then they will react on that. Okay, if we need to have if the EU says in 10 years there are not any more circular products on the market, then we will run short on products because there won't be so much developed at the time.
For example, yeah, or colors, for example.
Colors and types of cloth we won't find anymore.
Because it takes time to find substitutes for the...
I mean, I always tell us, please buy bright colors right now, because in the future we will get gray, light blue, yes, brown, and after each washing it's diminishing again. We will see. That's Glaskugel.
Yeah, and we cannot see in the future.
In the future,
Good.
right.
Yeah, so we have to come back in 5 years and conclude with this for now. We talked about how textiles and their waste is managed and what are related problems and also what can be changed. The challenging part is there are many things to change. The positive part is there are many things to change. So let's change them to hopefully achieve a more sustainable textiles economy while still enjoying our wonderful clothes. I thank you very much for your participation. It was very pleasant and interesting. And the organizers have a small present for you, which is made of textiles actually. So it fits this talk better than the last one. You can just pass this on and you can discover by yourself what this is, but it's very useful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who discovers it first?
Is it
It could be for sunglasses or something to
no,
put in.
Yeah, you can repurpose maybe the outer part for
contributing
sunglasses.
to emission levels.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
If I don't want to see what I see, then I can put this on.
If the clothes will be ugly in future, you can just put this.
But do you really think that like we will tend to use like brown and gray clothes and which all looks like uniforms? Or?
If we have to see what's on the chemical restriction come up, yeah, maybe there is, we need more substitutes, yes, we will get substitutes more. Then we will have maybe our bright colors or something like that.
Yeah, there are also some companies in charge of that. So they develop bacteria who can produce certain dye stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if it works, then we will look bright again, too. But right now we have to see.
And if clothes are made to be durable, more durable, then we have the clothes for 40 years, so that's no problem then.